The Southern Death Cult were a British post-punk gothic rock band in Bradford, England during the 1980s, and this is one of their albums or singles titled Ghost Dance. The band was first named the Southern Death Cult, and then that band reformed to be the Cult. And one of the reasons I want to cover them is because of where they got their name. They say the name is based on the Southern Death Cult, a southeastern ceremonial complex of Native American culture group of mound builders. The group shared similar ceremonies, iconography, and artifacts with the Mesoamerican, Maya, and Aztec cultures. And we will look at that Native American culture group, but first let's look at the band. First, the album art. So this is Love, which came out in the mid-80s. And you can see here they have the wings of Isis and the black sun, or the dark star, black hole sun, and then sigils. Some of you probably would remember that album. Here we have a snakeskin background with a knight chess piece. Some of the songs from that album, besides Go West, Crazy Spinning Circles, are Spirit Walker, Dreamtime, and Bad Medicine Waltz. Here you see the Templar cross. Here I'm not sure if you can see that, but in the middle there's another Templar cross. There's an Ankh, and then at the top there is an eye hand, and you can't see it very well, but we'll cover it later. This one is titled Choice of Weapon. Seems to be stylized for the ceremonial Native American group. Shaman looking guy. Same here. You guys might remember that album also. This one is titled, or this is from their single song titled Little Devil. Let's look at some more. Born into this. An alchemy symbol. This is from Deeply Ordered Chaos. The Hidden City, I think, is the name of that album. Under the Midnight Sun. And I wonder what the Midnight Sun is. Notice the hand symbol on this one also. That's the Hamsa, also used by the Southern Death Cult Native Americans, which we'll talk about that one later. Revolution. This one has the Chinese I Ching symbolism, which Donnie Depp and Damien Eccles got matching tattoos of. The wolf. And I think that song, Brother Wolf and Sister Moon, were literally about a werewolf, now that I think about it. And there's Lucifer. And as I was looking around, I found the Blue Oyster Cult band also had a very similar album art, and I'll cover them in another video. So now we can look at this Southern ceremonial complex of Native Americans who scholars say were active from 1200 to 1600 AD. And their name is a bit sinister, and we'll see why that is as we look through some of their iconography practices and artifacts. They were identified and grouped by scholars in 1945, but the publication of their findings didn't start happening, it said, for the broader public until around 2004. So it seems odd that this British rock band would have known about that back in the early 1980s, because I didn't even know about this cultural classification, and I've studied Maya Creek tribal associations before for the Creek tribes in my area in Georgia, and I never came across this information. And I also haven't heard people who cover the Serpent Mound and other burial mounds mention them either. But this is the ceremonial complexes of the Southern Death Cult, which includes the Ohio Serpent Mound builders also. You can see them up here where it says Fort Agent. And this is just a map of where they found artifacts from them. And notice that this area, which would be, this area right here in the southeast, is relatively close to where the Mayas would have been, down here in the Yucatan. This would have been Chichen Itza, right here on the tip, where the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon were located. And the ocean is relatively shallow here in the Gulf, near the land areas, which indicates to me that the waterline could have been further back, making crossing over this area from the Yucatan to Florida more accessible 1,000+ years ago. The Timucua tribes were here in Florida and Jekyll Island, Georgia, and they were the ones doing sacrifice because sacrificial altars were found there. And this is where the Rockefellers had his Indian mound cottage built on top of a Timucua burial mound. It says that the social organization of this Native American grouping and culture was based on warfare. It was concluded based on weapons found at the elite burial sites, it says. It says the symbolic imagery found at the elite burial sites bound together their nobility, warfare, and cosmology into a coherent whole. And war was a concept taught to man by the Watchers according to the Book of Enoch, and they also taught cosmology. The southeastern ceremonial complex refers to a religious mechanism which supported the local chiefs. And that sounds very familiar. But what kind of religion was this? It says the imagery focuses on cosmology and the supernatural beings that inhabit the cosmos. So that's paganism, polytheism, worship of the fallen. So let's look at the artifacts. Some of these are actual artifacts and some are drawings of the iconography on the artifacts that were found. So the first one is the Great Serpent. This is the Great Serpent or Horned Serpent or Winged Serpent was the most well-known mythological figure, the denizen of the underworld, a source of great power, and that parts of dismembered great serpents were kept in medicine pouches. Red Horn. This person with the sun disk on his head is Red Horn, and he looks very serpentine-like, Akhenaten with the serpent-shaped head and large eyes and facial features. Red Horn was known as the Morning Star. The report describes a narrative shared by the natives that Red Horn and giants play ball with their lives staked on the outcome. And those are the same stakes as the ball game played by the Maya type of Hunger Games. And just a quick note about the Maya, they were the ones that had the obsidian mines right behind the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon and used obsidian to make mirrors for divination. John Dee used the Maya obsidian to make his scrying mirror that they have on display in the British Museum. See my video titled Dragon Glass. And it seems like a lot of these European witches like to use the Native American methods because the London nobility wanted the Kachina Nephilim doll of the Hopi and traded their land at Lake Havasu for it. See my video titled Kachina. Speaking of mirrors, Catherine Bruce mentioned mirrors as another way of contacting the fallen and perhaps getting ancient tech from them, which is true. As we saw, the Hall of Mirrors at the Royal Palace in Geneva and also in Versailles, along with all their pagan god statues in those halls of mirrors. The next one I'm trying to find is the Birdman. Yeah. The peregrine falcon or birdman. We've been talking about the peregrine falcon, which this was crazy that it's in their iconography. It says, beings wearing the forked eye motif were derived from the peregrine falcon. The falcon was, and apparently still is, an avatar of warriors and an object of supplication for a lengthy life and a long line of descendants. Its supernatural origin placed the upper world with a pantheon including the sun, moon, and 4 stars. He dances, costumed with great ground-sweeping wings and a raptor beak, masked. In his right hand he holds a club prepared to strike, and in his left he holds rattles fashioned from human skulls. Falcon imagery is associated with warfare, high-stakes gaming, and family dynastic ambitions, symbolized by arrow flights and the rising of the pre-dawn morning star for the succession of descendants into the future. The swastika. It says a swastika symbolized the creative and generative power of the underworld. And the swastika is found in America, Eurasia, Africa, so basically everywhere, and it's ancient, very ancient. Here's a quote from the Rig Veda. With swasti, we would follow along our path like the sun and the moon. May we meet up with one who gives in return, one who does not smite, with one who knows. So knows what exactly? So the swastika is related to cosmology and the gate of heaven, or the pole star known as the axis mundi, which is another term used by this Native American death cult, who see the axis mundi as the connection between the heaven, the earth, and the underworld. The Hamza. We saw that on the album art for the cult, but it's also in their iconography. It's the hand-eye motif, and it is a human hand with an eye gazing out from the palm, another symbol of deity representing a portal to another world. The hand with the eye in the palm was used in ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, Phoenicia, Israel. Celebrities use it, such as Madonna and Jennifer Aniston, and it is known as a symbol of Ishtar or Inanna. The Hamza can be traced to Carthage and Phoenicia, and is an important sign of apotropic magic in the Islam world. That's what this says. And this right here is from Carthage, dedicated to Tennet and Baal Haman, with carved open right hand as well as a sign of Tennet, sign of Baal Haman, caduceus, and naval symbols. And also a current cult in Point Pleasant, where the Mothman was infamously reported uses this as their symbol. Another concept practiced by the death cult practitioners was dualism, and some of the artifacts show pipe ceremonies also, of course, because I'm sure they used psychedelic drugs to communicate with the fallen. That seems to be a common theme, as we have seen in prior videos. And it seems that most of these symbols that we have gone over are very ancient spiritual concepts and symbolism, but shared across separate cultures around the world from different time frames. The serpent god, the peregrine falcon, the eye, the swastika, the morning star, dualism. So signs and symbols rule the world, right? And there could only be one way that these very specific ancient concepts and symbols are shared across these separate cultures. They must come from the spirit realm of the fallen, but none of these concepts come from cultures who bear good fruit, including the current one. So I guess one point of this video is if you see any of this iconography, turn and run. But the way that I found out about this Southern Death Cult culture was listening to the Bump podcast, and one of the guys on there, his teenage daughter, got into Lilith because of stuff she was finding online. And he said it went very dark, where she wanted to be called by the name of an ancient Slavic vampire / werewolf, and even started saying that was her name. And it was Vordelek. And he mentioned that she was getting into things that used to be only found in obscure occult circles and books, and now it's being pushed everywhere, especially to the youngers, and we do see that. And this is just from a movie from last year titled Vordelek. And I have children, so I get it, and this is no joke. This is very ancient, and it's a very serious spiritual war going on. Thanks for listening.